Okay, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Let me get my camera on here. So thank you for joining. My name is Carl DePrado with A to Z Business IT. We're going to do, let me go out here and share my screen. Title of the talk, or actually the training that we're doing today, is 7 things that every business owner must do to protect themselves online. What you're really looking to do is simple steps you can take to protect your family, your identity, and your reputation here. And quickly, who am I? My name's Carl DePrado. I have over 30 years of experience in cybersecurity, information technology. I'm 2-time Amazon bestseller in cybersecurity. Just got approved with New York State for a CLE training for attorneys, and I also do CE cybersecurity training in the realty space. I serve as a mentor to the ASCII community, which is 1,200 companies throughout North America, and I help them with their cybersecurity. And I'm also an active partner in partnership with the FBI through an InfraGard program. And on top of that, I am a husband and a father of 2 children. So really if you get anything out of this talk that we're going to have today, the first thing is really that you're just not too small to be hacked. I can't say that enough. A lot of people feel like that they're too small, that the cyber criminals aren't going to bother with them. I wish that were the case, but as Master Yoda says, size matters not. It's not that you're too small to be hacked. You're probably just too small to make the news. It's a $6 trillion industry currently, and the news is always going to follow the big stories, which involve hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars. That's where they're going to be doing it, because there's a lot of those out there. But there's also a lot of smaller cyber hacks, which even a small incident breach can be in excess of $100,000 easily. And we'll get into why that happens. So, I want to talk about one of the most common forms first of the 7, phishing, which is a form of fraud where, an attacker masquerades as somebody else in email or other forms such as social media, text messaging. What they're trying to do is gain information. And how effective is phishing? Well, back in between 2013 and 2015, there was an attack on Facebook and Google, and between the 2 companies, they lost over $100 million. And if you consider how technologically savvy you have to be to work at those 2 companies and still become a victim of a phishing attack, it's kind of why we really want to talk about what's going on and why you should pay attention to what we're talking about here. So why am I sharing this with you? As I was saying, phishing is honestly the easiest way for a hacker to scam you. And if we're going to deal with, of all the things that we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about what are the lowest hanging fruits to deal with first. So, so why do hackers want you? What they're looking for is they want your identity. They want to be able to masquerade as you. They want to have your privileges as a business owner, and they also want to have your authority, and what do they do with that? Well, what do they do with your identity is they'll file fake tax returns with the IRS. They'll access your credit cards and open new ones. And they'll also open lines of credit. And in some cases, we even see home theft where they've actually been able to go into the title companies and steal the title right out of, right from somebody's home. And, as far as what they can do with your identity. They can also access medical care information. And so what do they do with your privileges, as we were talking? Well, they can download all your email, your contacts, your calendar events. They can access your computer networks. They can do administrative access, especially as an owner. They can copy human resource data of all your employees and their personal information, such as Social Security and driver's license, so they can go ahead and do identity theft on them as well. And what can they do with your authority? They can buy gift cards or other types of things. They can get a vendor to update the payment information so that instead of sending it to the correct person, they're sending it to the bad guys' bank accounts. They can convince the human resource department to send data that they think that they're sending to you to somebody else. And they can also add new vendors for payment. We've seen that as well. And I think one of the more common ones that we also see is they can have your team wire money. So what we want to first do is learn how, there's 7 things that we're going to talk about. So first thing I want to talk about is knowing how to recognize a phish. So as we were talking about, what's a phish? Well, phishing is basically the simplest one, or we know clone phishing. They cast a wide net. They use common vendors. So they'll use somebody like Facebook. They'll use Amazon. They'll use Best Buy. They use Target, places that that people know, and they'll steal and they'll make their emails look like they're coming from them. But they are relatively easy to detect. And the average scammer will probably send it's large numbers for them. They'll send hundreds of thousands of emails a day. And if they get less than 0.5% that accepts it, they're still doing very well with that. The next one that we look at is what we call a spear phishing attack. Now, a spear phishing attack, what they'll do, it's focused. It's very personalized. And the way they get that personalized information is they may have been able to get into your email or somebody else's email that you're in contact with and been able to spy on a conversation. So they'll have some personal data that they can refer back to in a new email. And so that by that nature, it makes it harder to detect. Now, the one that we're really seeing a lot of on the higher end is what we call executive whale phishing. And what that is, it's very targeted. They have incredible detailed knowledge. As a matter of fact, usually a person gathering information on an individual of a high net worth or high value target, they could spend anywhere from a week to 6 to 8 months gathering information on that individual to really start to know who they are. They're creating a whole dossier. So they're getting incredibly detailed knowledge. And because of that, these are the hardest ones to recognize without proper training and the proper systems in place. But in the end of the day, regardless of whether you're looking at the simplest con to the most sophisticated, they're all going to work in the same way. They all have the same mechanisms. So they're going to make them believable. They're going to, add in some form of, identification. They're going to make it look like there's somebody else. They're going to make it urgent. And this is probably the biggest thing. You're going to get something like an case fraud urgency that's there. If you look up here in this email, you'll see that also that it says Chase fraud alert, and then the email itself is pointing to a different place that isn't Chase. So, what is this email looking to do? It's looking for you to click this email saying, yes, I recognize all these, or no, I don't. And either one of them is going to send you to a fake site where they're going to try and grab your credentials for your Chase account. But again, it's with urgency. There's a sense that you need to go ahead and do this right away. And they're emotional. So, you look at this one here, and it's coming from a fake email that's a misspelled domain of Microsoft. And what they're saying is a low-level security event has been triggered. And then there's a click here to investigate. And if you investigate, the only person who's being investigated is your computer and your data, so that the bad guys can go ahead and get in there. So what do we do to protect ourselves? First of all, you need to slow down. The bad guys, what they're trying to do is hit an emotional trigger so that you won't think rationally. And under great stress, we all tend to not think as rationally as we should. By slowing down, we really give ourselves some time to look at the information and carefully examine it. Hover over the links to see details. And I'm going to show you an example of this in a second. Don't click on the links in the emails, even if they're spelled correctly. And I'll explain that there's a new hack that just came out in about the last week and a half that really explains this. And never use the phone numbers from the emails themselves. If you think that the person is sending, that this email has weight, go to directly to the vendor and on their published website, and go to that phone number, but don't go to the phone number in the email itself. So let's go over a couple. I wanted to put this example. This is a great one here of what to look out for. So here in this email example, if we look here, you'll see that there's an illegitimate or unfamiliar email address. And if you look here, we see accounts, and it's account, and the email address is actually accounts.securitybank@gmail.com. That's our fictitious company for this email example. So first of all, they're using a Gmail account because it's free. And there's a number of free email services like Yahoo, AOL, Outlook.com, Hotmail, the list goes on. A legitimate company is never going to use a Gmail or a free email account. They're going to pay for the domain and have a professional domain. As a matter of fact, Google does not use Gmail to send out its business email. It uses google.com. So that's the first thing you want to look at. It's an easy trigger to see there. The other one is sense of urgency, action required, threat, something along those lines. Again, they're looking for you to create that emotional response that you need to respond to this pretty quickly. We're also, a lot of times, if it's on a large scale, it's going to be very generic. They're not going to have the time to learn your name. They're just going to call you customer, dear valued sir, madam, to whom it may concern. Number 4, and this is getting to be a little less, we're going to see less of this, but it's still something to look at, is spelling and grammatical mistakes. And the reason for that is the people who are writing these emails, a lot of them, English is not their first language, so they're using translator apps. But as AI gets better, we should see a lot better spelling out of these guys, as far as that's concerned. So you still want to come out and see if there's context makes sense, because the advantage to you as a native speaker of English is that you might be able to pick up something there. But if it's definitely misspelled, it's clearly a red flag, especially if it's coming from a larger institution that's going to have time and effort. They're going to take a time and effort to make sure that their emails and their correspondence is properly vetted going out as far as for grammatical errors are concerned. The other one I want to talk about is hovering over a suspicious link. So here you take your mouse and you put it right over the link, and in both Microsoft and on Apple devices, it's going to tell you what the link is. Now, in this case, it's a redirect. Like, we can basically have a link say, one thing, and then it actually takes you to another place. And the other thing to look at is that, and why I say links are going to become more challenging. If you look at the URL or the website, or what we call the web address that was printed, it was securitybank.net/info. Well, what the bad guys have done for years is misspell bank. They may have done BONK or BONNK or something along those lines, just to make it look like it's close enough to the real name so that people would click on it. And we've just been made aware of the fact that we're seeing domains that are being registered where instead of using the A in the Latin keyboard, they've been registering everything in the keyboard except for the A in Cyrillic, which is a different language. And because of that, that letter is different, and it's very hard to detect a Cyrillic A from a Latin A. They look almost identical. And so you still, again, it goes back to our rules. Don't click it if something doesn't feel right. Take a minute, pause, and go to the right website to vet that instead of going to the one that's on the email itself. And finally, you want to look at attachments, especially if they've got, .exe files, .dlls, .zips, anything that requires it to what we call to execute something as like a program. We definitely do not want to, be clicking on those for any reason whatsoever. So we've talked about that. So let's talk about how to protect your passwords. So 4 out of 5 passwords are, breaches 4 out of 5 breaches were linked to insecure passwords. Your passwords, hackers hunt for the easy ones for easy access. They take time guessing your passwords. What'll happen is, let's say you have a throwaway password that you use for a company like Netflix, and they have a data breach. And so they get your username and your password, and you're like, okay, well, they're not going to be able to do anything damaging with that particular password. What they can do is, if that password is similar to the same password you would use for your banking or any other type of highly sensitive website, they're going to start to try and guess what that password is. So because of that, passwords are a very easy way to get access. They can buy passwords on the dark web, which is what happens when they have these big data dumps of from breaches such as Adobe or Apollo, or what we see with through Netflix or any of these other companies. They basically will take all that information and they sell it on the dark web for pennies on the dollar. And so, so what they'll do is when they use it, they'll take the passwords and they're going to use them for other resources like we talked about. So how do you protect yourself? Don't reuse passwords. You should kind of treat passwords like underwear. Never share them with anybody. Change them frequently. As far as that's concerned, don't leave them on your desk. Don't use patterns as well. Don't use baseball 1 and then make the next password baseball 1 2 and then baseball 1 2 3, or then decide to get clever and do 1 2 3 baseball. The bad guys are going to figure that out very quickly. There are very simple tools to use to look for passwords. Avoid insecure places to store the passwords. I don't know how many people are accountants on this email, but when a bad guy goes in and attacks an accountant's computer, the first thing that they look for is a spreadsheet that says passwords. They're all trained. That's one of the first files that they're going to be looking for. So you don't want to leave anything that's inside your computer that they can get to the keys to the Holy Kingdom. As a matter of fact, this is what happened in the Uber attack a few months ago. They breached one of the computers, and inside was a spreadsheet with all the information on how to get throughout the whole system. So Uber at that time was trading at $70 billion. And within 3 days, they lost 4% of their total value. 4%. That's in the hundreds of millions of dollars that they lost very quickly because somebody had made the passwords very easy to get. They were out in clear text in their computers. You also want to make sure you're not storing it in Outlook or in Word documents, Excel files. So the best way of doing this is to get yourself a password manager. I know we've had some problems with LastPass, but the passwords weren't stolen, and there's still other good password managers out there. And it's still better to have a password manager than not to have a password manager. Somebody asked me today, well, why wouldn't I just keep it in a book or something like that? And they explained, well, if you think about it like banks, there used to be people who would keep their money in a mattress in their house as opposed to putting it into a bank. And why is it safer to put it in a bank? Because they have better security and better ways of protecting your money. It's the same thing with a password manager. It has a better system to protect your passwords than what you would have from a simple book as far as that's concerned, or Post-it that's on your desktop. You also want to set up multi-factor authentication on all of your accounts. What is multi-factor authentication? Well, when you go to a website and you log in, it's going to ask you for a password. We call that that's basically single authentication. A more sophisticated website will then say, I'm sending you a code either through a text message or through an application on your phone. That's two-way, and then you have to enter that in. So that requires you to have your phone present to identify that you are who you are. So that's why we call it multi-factor. So even if the bad guy gets the password without the authenticator, which changes frequently, that's only set up for the moment that you need to log in, the bad guy cannot access your account. And so you want to put that on any account that has any value to you whatsoever, and that includes social media, that includes phone services. If you have whoever you have your phone plans with. And one of the classic reasons you want to do that is because there's ways of porting your phone over to the bad guy. If they have access to your billing to the billing website of your phone company, they can actually request that your phone number be transferred to a different phone. And the only way that you'll know that this has happened is when your phone stops working. So again, you want to put multi-factor authentication on your phone system, and you're also going to want to make sure that your password is not a default password on your phones. Most people overlook that, and it is a great way for a hacker to gain access into your systems. So we've already talked about, recognizing a phish, protecting your passwords, and so let's talk about keeping your, Office 365 account safe and your Google Docs safe. So here's some statistics. 65% of all organizations worldwide suffered a data breach in business compromise, and 77, and so in 2021 it went from 60 to 77%. It's increasing exponentially, and we're at a rapid rate. So the Federal Bureau of Investigation said that the amount of money lost in business email scams continues to grow, with a 65% increase. And between 2019 and 2021, I'm sure when they come out with their new report, it's going to continue to go on. And so bottom line is, it's increasing in the frequency, the number of attacks, and it is increasing on the cost that each of those attacks has. So what does a Microsoft 365 user, what does the attacker get? And this, you can use this if you're using Google. It's basically they're going to be the same rules. They're going to get access to your email. They're going to be able to look at your saved items, your sent items, your deleted items, your contacts, their tasks, calendar events, notes. This is everything that you're doing. They're really going to get a blueprint of who you are and what you're doing and your movements throughout the day and who you're talking to. And so what are they going to do with the messages? Well, they're going to send messages to your contacts. They'll send ransomware, is very common, or or some form of social scamming. One of the more devious things that they can do very easily, and it'll take you quite a while to figure it out, is they're going to create forwarding rules inside. And what they're going to do is they're going to look for a subject like invoice or wire transfer, some type of thing that requires the movement of money. And what they'll do is they are going to send a copy to themselves in that rule. They'll say, if we see something in the subject line that says invoice, let's send that to XYZ email address. And also at the same time, move that item to the deleted folder so that they don't see it. At that point, they'll go in, they'll look at the email, they'll change where the payment is to be made. They'll put that email back in the inbox, and they'll just wait for their mailbox money to come in as that person goes in and sends it to the wrong person. So how do you protect yourself? Again, we were talking about having multi-factor authentication set up on your email systems. Do not log into your email accounts from non-work computers. Also, do not use free or public Wi-Fi. Why do we say that? Because it's very easy to be susceptible to what we call a man-in-the-middle attack, where the bad guys can corrupt the Wi-Fi and be able to track any messages being sent through an open Wi-Fi network, even if it had been encrypted on the computer when it was being sent via email, or through if somebody goes through an airport or something and logs in, they can proceed to get that data from there. So let's see, we've gone through how to recognize a phish, how to protect your passwords, keeping your Microsoft 365 email account safe. So we're going to talk about smishing. So here's a common one. Let's say your name is Mary, and you get an email that says, "Is this Mary at ABC Company?" How would you respond? Well, if you responded yes or no, any response is a wrong one. And the reason that they're doing this is they're trying to connect the name to the phone number. And what do? These types of attacks are actually on the rise. We're seeing more and more of these every day. I just did a class this morning, and I had out of 20 people, about 8 of them had already said yes. They'd already received emails along this, texts along this line. And it's really so bad. The Federal FCC sent out a bulletin just talking about these particular robotechs. So what do they do once they identify you as, your number and you as a person? Well, what they're going to do is they're going to either try to get into your phone. And when they do that, they're going to there's probably more data that's important to you on your phone than is on your computer. On your phone, you probably have apps to the bank accounts, to websites, to social media, financials, Amazon, shipping sites, and all the accounts there. And what they can also do is install malware. They can send you a text message. It doesn't matter whether you have an iPhone or you have an Android phone. They can send you a text message. You click on it, and what they are able to do is install an application in the background to have control over your phone. So what do they do when they get it? Obviously it's going to be the same as if it was on your computer. You're going to be able to transfer money out. They're going to be able to make fraudulent purchases. They're going to be able to sell your account access to other criminals. So how does it work? Text message is delivered to your phone. You open the link. You see a convincing, well-crafted message. You enter your personal information, username and password, bank details, and you give a multi-factor authentication code. And it may not be all of these things. It may just be some of them. But either way, at the end of the day, another hacker wins the lotto because now they have access to your accounts, and they're looking to take everything that you've worked really hard to get. So how do you protect yourself? Don't respond to texts or open link or text messages, and especially if they have open links in them, if you do not recognize the phone number. Like I said, the attackers are just going to keep a list for future attacks. And even though phone numbers can be changed, people really focus on not changing phone numbers if they don't have to. And again, never, like your underwear, never share sensitive personal or financial information, especially in the text messages. And by the way, they can be easily spoofed. It's very easy to spoof a phone number on a phone to look like it's coming from somebody else. You want to do is use another method to, if you think that this is concerning, call them on a landline, use another method to verify the communication. Go to a known published website that has that information. Don't click on the link. It's exactly the same as what would happen with an email. Okay. And again, look out for misspellings and grammatical errors. And as I said, numbers can be spoofed. You want to validate that. And so how do we protect ourselves? One of the other things, remember, the IRS is never going to call you. They're just going to send you a letter if they think you owe them money. The other thing is, when in doubt, if you think that somebody's called, from a government agency, just go back and look, tell them, ask them what branch they're in, and then go ahead and call directly, call from the outside of that. The agencies understand that this is something that happens. And if they are calling you, they're going to be very amicable to do that. The bad guys won't. They really are, again, looking at short time, and they're going to basically increase their threats to you. And again, reports, there's an option in all phones when you delete to report the scams to your wireless carrier. If you don't know that, just dial 7726 or spam when you forward, to forward the email message. And if you're a victim, you can also go to fcc.gov to file a complaint with them as well. So something that a lot of people aren't aware of is what we call multi-factor authentication bypass. So how do the hackers use this? So we've all had this, where we get a request, whether it's a text message or whether we get a little pop-up here. And so, whether we want to add or approve, and if we don't recognize it, we'll deny it. Well, imagine getting 200 of them at once. This happened to Uber. Basically, one of their IT directors was hit with 200 of them. And what they did was, it wasn't a call from IT, it was a call from somebody pretending to be their vendor. They told them that there was a problem. They asked them to approve one of those requests because it was the only way they could get in and fix it. And once they were able to do that, they were, again, they got into the systems and all, like we said, that company lost 4% of their value within 4 days off of that. And so what this is called is MFA, multi-factor fatiguing, where the bad guys get in. And it's just one of the ways that they do to get past multi-factoring. Another one is, well, like we mentioned, a port out attack, and that's, or what we call a when we talked about the port out attack, that is where somebody goes in and contacts your phone company pretending to be you and ports your phone number to another location. And then at that point, they have they can proceed to receive text messages from your bank to verify who you are. And the only way you know that there's been a problem is your phone doesn't work all of a sudden. So the other one we talked about a little bit is what we call them, which is the reason we talk about not using free Wi-Fi, is we call it a man-in-the-middle attack. So you get an email or with a link, and you click on it. And so what the hackers have done is they have set up, let's say this white guy right here, this little white symbol thing is the servers for your bank, the legitimate bank that you're using. What the bad guys will do is they'll set up a proxy website that looks exactly like your bank's website. When you click on that link, when you go in there, you're to the fake website, you're going to put your credentials in. They're going to pass those credentials over to the legitimate bank. And so the legitimate bank is going to send you a request. They're either going to send you a text message, or they're going to ask you for a code on your phone. And at that point, you're going to put your code into the website on the bank, on the bad guys stuff. They now have credentials and are able to get into your accounts. And what they'll also do is they'll redirect you to a password failed try again, so you're none the wiser. You're just saying, oh, I don't know why I'm having this problem. And you'll just go back and maybe you'll say, well, maybe I typed in the address incorrectly. So how do you protect yourself? If you didn't start the request for the approval, never approve an unexpected push notification from one of your apps with these numbers on them. Do not give your MFA codes to anyone. Again, like your toothbrush. These are things that you just don't want to share. Avoid free and public Wi-Fi internet. If somebody's sitting there and they have access, root access to that internet service, they can find all the traffic that's going in and out. And if your traffic isn't encrypted, they will be able to easily read usernames, passwords, and the authentication codes at the same time. And like we said, just as we said before, don't use non-work computers to access MFA protected resources. If you've decided, one of the things to know whether your website is important enough that you want to put MFA is usually those sites are going to have the option to do that. I don't know of a bank that doesn't do that, or banks by default require it. But if you have MFA on that resource, that already means that you probably don't want to access that. That probably is very sensitive information that you don't want to be accessing on a non-work computer, nor do you want your employees to do that either. And as we said, don't click on links from emails. So we've been going through here. We're down to protecting your personal information. So what's the personal information on your computer? You want to build, it can be of value to a hacker. Employee information, payroll data, contracts, tax files, loan applications, credit card statements. Also, you might have what we call intellectual property. These are things that would be of value to a hacker if they got in. One of the things that you should be doing is what we call BitLocker, which allows you to encrypt the drive. Apple has this resource as well, and it's also turned on by default on iOS devices, and I believe it is now turned on by default on Android devices. I'm not 100% sure on that, but if it isn't, it's easy to turn on. And what that does is it encrypts your hard drive so that if somebody got your computer, they had access and pulled out the drive and they didn't have the passwords, they couldn't get the data that was inside of there. So so basically they would need a special key to unlock it. You don't really notice this when your drive is encrypted through these services. It's very transparent. Basically the way it works is it unlocks your drive when you log in correctly through your computer. So when if you lose your laptop, you can basically, they don't have access to your data where it was stolen. So, what if you were phished? Your personal data on, that's on your computer, as we've talked about here. That's all this stuff here. You want to basically make sure that if you're not encrypting the whole drive, you also want to have what's called an encrypted vault. This is separate from the actual encryption of the drive. And what this is for sensitive data that might be on your computer. You want to have a separate password protected vault that's also encrypted. And the reason for that is if you are phished, then the bad guys, even if they have access to your computer, they can't get into your vault unless they have the password for those really important sensitive documents. So it's like having two safes inside of your computer. So only on, so that way, if it's stored in the vault and somebody is able to phish you, only unencrypted, they'll only have unencrypted information available to them. So think about it like your office. You have your contracts, you're an attorney, you have your wills, you put those in a safe, and then you have like all the menus for takeout for everybody to be able to order lunch. You put those in a drawer, you really don't care about them. That's the stuff that so there's different grades of data. So the more valuable the data is, the more security you're going to want on that data to begin with. And the less important it is, the less you really need to protect it. So how do you protect yourself? Well, you want to verify that you have BitLocker on a Windows machine encrypted, or that you also want to make sure that the Apple encryption is working correctly. You also want to get yourself an encrypted vault for personal information that we talked about. And those two things are what you're really looking for. So how do you know if you've been hacked? Is our last one. So how do you know if you've been hacked? Well, there's 5 simple signs. You get notifications that your password was randomly reset. That's a warning. That's a red flag. Your email signature gets updated. That's another possibility. All of a sudden you see a new phone number showing up there, a new business name, new title. That's something you keep a look at. If your signature is changing, you've probably been hacked. If you're starting to get tons of spam or tons of text messages from people saying that that you've reached out to them, that is another reason that you would be hacked. One of the ones we used to see going back 10, 15 years ago, this was the only way we'd see if somebody had gotten a virus, is they'd get a lot of pop-up messages, but we don't see that as much. But we do see that every once in a while. And you don't see your emails. You notice that emails you didn't send are in your inbox or in your sent items. That usually means that the bad guys had web access to your emails, and is now sending emails that look like they're coming from you. They're basically impersonating you. So really covered a lot here in the last 30-something minutes here. So what's next? Let me be real honest with you. Getting all of this right, getting it correct, it's not easy. It's not a simple thing. It is hard. If you don't know what you're doing, there's a lot that's at risk. So what can be done? Well, the first thing you want to look at when you're trying to put together a plan to secure your business, to put all these things together, is what we call a cybersecurity risk assessment. And what that is it's basically it's a report that you're doing, and that you're having a third party that knows how to address, that looks at all of your systems and everything to see where the weaknesses are, and if there are compliance issues, and what are the important steps that you as a company need to do next. Where are the holes? Where are the holes in your systems? Just like if you were looking at a fence, you'd want to make sure that the fence was covering the property correctly, that it was strong enough to withstand any particular issues that might arise. It's the same thing that you're doing in an assessment, but it's a lot more detailed, because you can't see it. It does require somebody who really knows what they're doing to look at the systems, to be able to know that the systems are behaving correctly. And when I mean systems, I'm not really just talking about computers. I am also talking about first of all, we start with people, and then we also look at the processes. And before I do this, I just want to put if you do want to learn more about this and schedule a call, there's a website that I've set up for booking, a strategy call. But what we first want to look at, any good assessment is going to look at the people, the processes, the environments that are there, and then finally the tools that are being used to protect the business. So when we talk about the people, we're talking, are they properly trained? Are they going to fall for every attack, click on everything? Are they going to be your greatest liability, or are they going to be your greatest asset in protecting your business? And that to do that, you're going to need to have testing. You're going to have training. You're also going to want to look at who has access to what. And I can tell you pretty much almost with 100% of certainty that the businesses that do not train their people either are in the midst of a breach and they don't know it, or will be, because social engineering is so clearly the easiest door in for the bad guys to come in. And if your people are not trained, they will, they're going to definitely, they're definitely at risk of everything, of falling for any scam that's out there. So that's the first part. Then you want to look at your processes. So this is really, your policies and procedures. What are the rules of how data is handled? If an employee has data on their computers or on company devices, does it just stay on company devices? Can they put it on their personal devices? How do they share that data? Who gets access to what? These are the things that reinforce your plan, how you're going to secure your environment. And one of the other things you're going to do inside of that is you're going to have plans as far as, God forbid, you are hacked. You're going to want to know what are the steps you need to take as quickly as possible to mitigate that hack. Now, we've talked about the sad effect of people going out of business because, getting breached at $100,000 worth of exposure that they weren't expecting. And so having, a plan that's written, that's tested and practiced really is the keys between surviving or going out. Think of it like if you ran a school and you had 100 school kids that you're responsible for. Well, every day, I'm sorry, not every day, but at least a couple of times a year, you're going to have fire drills. You're going to teach the kids where they need to go in the case of a fire. So it's the same thing, in your business. And who do you contact? Who contacts who as far as if there's a breach is concerned. So these are very critical to your system. This is one of the things that we look for when we're doing a cybersecurity assessment. The other thing that we're going to look at is the environment. Where's the data stored? Is it in the cloud? Is it locally on local computers? Are the systems up to date? Are they being patched correctly? What's the culture as far as how do they treat security? Is there a lot of Post-it notes with passwords on every computer? Or, what's that mindset there inside of the environment? And then the last thing that we're going to look at is tools. Now, tools, if most IT people, when they look and they say cybersecurity, and you talk to an IT person, they're going to go, oh, you need XYZ security, and we're going to do this, and this is going to work correctly. Well, I hate to tell you, without people, processes, and knowing the environment, your tools are going to fail. Imagine you get, and I have a picture in here of a race car, really nice vehicle. Now imagine, you get that vehicle and you don't have the team to support that vehicle, nor do you understand how to operate that. For myself, I don't drive a stick. You put me in behind that wheel, doesn't matter if that car costs $300,000. I'm not going to go very far with that car. As a matter of fact, I'm going to damage it. So if you don't have the other three things before that, the tools really don't serve you. And you see that with a lot of companies that do suffer a cyber breach, and they said we spent X amount of dollars. And when you go back and do deeper dives, you start to see that the reason that they failed was they didn't have the other things supporting the tools. So it's really the tools that support the people and the processes and the environment accordingly. And so though it is important, and they do need to be used, they do need to be used correctly. And they really need somebody who knows and understands how it's going to be done. So, so you want to know how you're doing, and this is really going to give you a snapshot. Now, you can do this yourself, but keep in mind, the downside of all this. This was a report that just came out of the National Archives Administration in Washington in November. 93% of the companies that lost their data, lost access, were locked out of their companies electronically through a ransomware or other attacks, or were locked from their email services for more than 10 days, filed bankruptcy within a year. As a matter of fact, it's even worse. 50% of that group filed bankruptcy immediately. That's how devastating it can be being in the middle of a data breach. So then the question for you is, all right, well, are you the right person to go ahead and start to, do a cybersecurity call? What I would like to do is invite you to a free strategy session. 15 minutes to go over, what we would look at, and plan and see where you are, see if this makes sense for you to, of where, what type of compliances you might have or need, and really set you up with a plan to take action. At the end of this 15 minutes, we're going to give you, definitely a free blueprint of where you can go, what the items are that you need to look at. And or if you decide you want us to work with you and help you implement that plan. So, again, this is a free invite for you. You just go ahead and click the link. There's no obligation to you. It's our way of saying thank you for attending this. I know you've sat through, almost an hour here. But again, the strategy, this is what we're here for. This is what we live, drink, and breathe, is making sure that your business is secure. So, the question you have to ask yourself is, are you right now, the way you're standing, are you completely protected? Could you withstand an attack? Could you withstand a cybersecurity breach? And if you have any doubts, give us, go ahead and book some time with us. There's no obligation. And, at least you'll be able to have a little bit more peace of mind. I appreciate your time today. And I thank you for that. You guys all have a great day. And again, I put the link in the chat, which is strategy.a2z business IT. And everybody have a great day. Thank you so much. Take care.